Hello, everyone. Welcome to the talk about proofing and debugging fonts with Hibiscus, which is a Mac application designed by the speaker, Muthu Nedumaran. He's been in the font engineering business for a very long time and specialized in East Asian scripts and, well, I guess, yeah, complex scripts in general. So, yeah, let's start the presentation.
Hi everyone. Thank you for attending this talk on proofing and debugging fonts with Hibiscus tools. My name is Muthu Nedumaran. Well, I did this presentation some time ago at the Type Weekend conference online. It was very well received by the very few who attended. I've covered a bit more in this session with some new features that I've added since I did this presentation the last time. Okay, a quick introduction to what I do and what's Hibiscus. I've been building fonts mostly for the Indian languages, particularly Tamil, since 1985 on a part-time basis as a hobby. And since 2002, I've been doing this full-time. And my first big project was to build all of the Indian languages and Indo-Chinese languages, fonts for these languages for Apple in 2004. At the time, there was no OpenType support on macOS. There was only AAT, Apple Advanced Typography, that was available. And even then, there was no equivalent of GPOS for positioning marks. There was no Kirks at the time. Kirks came in much later, but at the time there was no Kirks. So we had to do a lot of juggling with the glyphs in order to do the positioning with just substitution. They added OpenType later, so I also added OpenType to all of my fonts. But when I was building AT, I needed tools to proof and debug fonts to make sure that they're shaping correctly. And there were no tools available for AAT. There were plenty, or rather, there were a handful available for OpenType, but not for AAT. Well, I added support for AAT to all these tools that I wrote myself much later. I compiled all these tools into, give it a graphical user interface into a tool, and that's Hibiscus. A little bit about shaping text for those who have not built Brahmic fonts very quickly. Well, all Brahmic fonts require text shaping. They can be Indian languages, Sri Lankan or Sinhalese language, Southeast Asian languages, be Thai, Cambodian, Myanmar, Burmese, that's Myanmar, Balinese, Javanese, Lontara. All these are Brahmic-derived scripts that require shaping to render text correctly. And in these fonts, the number of glyphs are usually greater than the number of characters that are defined in Unicode for that script. All of the scripts require reordering, substitution. Some of them require insertion and positioning of marks above some base letters. Also, one script may support more than one language. For example, Devanagari supports Hindi, is used to write Hindi, Marathi, Nepali, Sanskrit, and other languages. Bengali is used to write Bengali, Assamese, Manipuri, and other languages. There are also optional forms. There are historical ligages. Some people may like using them. There are preferred styles for certain characters or glyphs. There are also contextual alternates, shapes of letters that may change based on the position they are in the text, in the string. There are a couple of shaping engines. The two of them are most popular. OpenType, which everybody probably works with now. It's universal. It's supported by all platforms. It's the engine used by Cortex, Apple. Apple also supports AAT. Direct Write, supports OpenType from Microsoft. WorldReady, now it's called UTE, or Unified Text Engine from Adobe, and HalfBuzz, it's Google and Linux and other platforms. AAT currently is only supported by Cortex and half-bars. That was quite interesting to see half-bars picking up support or adding support for AAT. Well, here's a quick demonstration of how things work in OpenType and AAT, just for comparison's sake. In OpenType, the insertion and reordering is done by the engine. We don't need to worry about it. So the engine understands which glyphs needs to be reordered, where glyphs needs to be inserted. All that is done for us. We just take care of substitution and positioning marks and other glyphs over base letters. Engine does the heavy lifting. It's a lot easier. Whereas in AAT, you have to do all of this by yourself: insertion, reordering, substitution, and positioning. And all these are done using state tables, which can be quite a challenge to understand and work with, right? So every action requires a table. Insertion requires a table, sometimes multiple tables, likewise reordering, substitution, and positioning. There's a lot of tools and platform support for OpenType. Not that many for AAT. Not that many for AAT, but it's very useful to experiment with new scripts where OpenType is not yet supported, or you want to do some things that OpenType does not allow you to do. What does Hibizcus do? Well, it reports, there are a lot of things Hibizcus does, and these are some of the highlights. Especially when you're building fonts for customers, and you're sending them different versions based on feedback. You want to produce a diff report and what has changed between the previous version and current version. Hibizcus shows differences glyph by glyph. What the highlight of Hibizcus is it lets us test what is expected from the font more than what is in the font. It gives you all the cluster combinations for a given language, for a given script. And that lets us see the different combinations that are required to render the script correctly. And all of this data for each script is added and provided for in Hibizcus. It lets us inspect components that constitute a cluster to see if the intended glyphs are actually being substituted or positioned in forming that cluster. It also lets us trace the shaping process to detect problems and bugs. I did this historically for AAT, but now it also supports OpenType. For those who really want to go and take a look at step-by-step shaping process, you can actually visually look at it using the trace viewer in Hibizcus. I will show a demo of that later on. And you can also look at words that are rendered for a given script. There are like hundreds of thousands of words for some languages, limited words that are words for those, where word list is scarce. But you can, view all these words and see how they are, if they are rendered correctly with your font. And all these words are included, word lists are included in the Hibizcus tool. Okay, with that brief introduction, let's look at some of the tools, and I'll give you a brief demo.
The Hibizcus tool has three viewers. The font viewer, which is what you're seeing on the screen, and there are two other viewers, a string viewer and trace viewer. Now let me drag a font into the window. Right? And now this font, it's still loading. This font has 1,777 items, as you can see at the bottom right-hand corner. It has got three scripts, Latin, it has Devanagari, and Tamil. This font is also included in macOS, so you can check that out. It's called Annai MN, and it has three scripts that I just told you. And simulates a handwriting as if it's written with a Sharpie pen. font viewer has 4 tabs: the Fonts tab, the Cluster tab, the Words tab, and the Numbers tab. The Font tab shows all the glyphs that are in the font, as you're seeing now. It's useful to do a glyph by glyph comparison between 2 fonts when you have, when you want to inspect the differences in 2 fonts. I use this to show differences between an earlier version and the new version of my font, especially when I'm doing projects for customers and they ask for changes. So I can clearly show them the differences and highlight the glyphs that I have changed. We'll come back here with a different font shortly, but let me just talk about the other things. So we have the Cluster tab. The cluster is the most useful tab in the font viewer. You select the script and the language you want to test your font with, and Hibizcus will give you all the possible elements of a cluster. So I've chosen Devanagari, and the default language is Hindi for Devanagari, and it shows you all the vowels, consonants, all 2-part conjuncts, which are 2,500 of them, all possible. All base consonants, forming conjunct pairs with other base consonants. So that's about 2,500 of them. It also has conjuncts. Not all these conjuncts are used in daily text. So I've also included common 2-part conjuncts. These are like extracted from text available from Wikipedia and other websites. That's less than half of them. And then you have the common 3-part conjuncts, which I've extracted, and common multi-part conjuncts, right? Other bases are, if you have a multi-part conjunct that I have not included in the list, you can type them, separating them by comma. You can also type in the dotted circle if you want to test your position of marks above that if you want to, right? So let me select common 2-part conjuncts, and then you can add marks on them. So I can add a nukta, and you can see how that changes the shaping behavior. I can add a ref, and you see that the ref is added, and make sure that it's correctly added to all these conjunct forms. I can add a raka and see how that changes the shaping process, how it changes the outcome of the shaping. Let me go back to none, and I can still choose vowel signs. This is the A matra, and add an A matra to that. I can add the E matra, and you can see that the contextual forms are correctly substituted. Or other matras that you can choose and work on. I can select the E matra and also add other signs like the Chandrabindu or Anuswara and see if they are shaping correctly. I can also add a ref to complicate things even further and make sure that they are shaping correctly. Again, you can check all the common 2-part conjuncts and see that these marks are working on them properly, or as you have designed it. So sometimes you may not want to have the matra cutting across because you think it's not a commonly used conjunct. That's up to you. That's your design. But whatever that you have designed, you want to see that it is actually working correctly. You can also, change the grid size to inspect, take a closer look, or you can double tap on the cell to take even closer look. Now, what other things you can do is you can say you want to see the glyphs, different glyphs in color, and each component, each glyph is given a different color. And you can see that the E matra is in a different color, the 2-part conjunct base letter is in a different color. This is actually an E matra with the ref and the Chandrabindu in one glyph. And I also have these blobs that are shown in different colors. I can, skip through, iterate through every glyph in this collection to see that they are actually shaping correctly. Now, you can invoke other tools from here. We'll come back to that shortly. So It is the most important tab in the font viewer. This is what I use most often when I finish a font, or when I'm even working on a font to check that all are supported. Now I can change the script to say Tamil, and Tamil is just one language, so you can see, and it's a very small set of glyphs. I can see that I've got an insertion here to make sure that the insertion is working correctly. I can look at the pulley to make sure the marks are positioned correctly. I can also go back to Devanagari. I can choose, I say consonants. Let me take off the ref. And let's get back to consonants. And I'm interested to look at these two glyphs, the L and the sh, to see that the localized form for Marathi is correctly substituted. So default is Hindi. I'm going to change it to Marathi. And you see, yeah, it is substituting the correct form. So you can actually switch languages and see that your localization, your LOCL lookup is actually getting executed. Now that we have talked about shaping, there's one other thing I want to show you in the fonts tab, the shaper. You can choose which shaping engine you want to test the outcomes with. The default is Cortex, that is built into macOS. But if you're targeting a platform or app that specifically uses half-bus, then you can set your shaper to half-bus. When you do that, Hibizcus will pass all the shaping work to half-bus instead of Cortex. In most cases, the results will be the same. However, if you want to do things that are out of the norm, like the way I added blobs to the end and beginning of letter or a word, then you want to test to ensure that the feature works in all of the shapers. Unfortunately, direct write is Windows, and since this is a Mac app, there's no option to choose direct write. You only have Cortex or half-bus. But once you have tested and fixed all the issues with either of these shapers, then you can install the font in Windows and see if there are issues with your features in traditional ways. By then, you would have identified and fixed all the major issues. The third tab in the font viewer is the Words tab. Here you can test how words in a given script and language will appear in the font that you're designing or working on. For common languages where plenty of text can be found on the internet, there can be up to 100,000 words for each language. For example, there are 100,000 words for Hindi, there are another 100,000 words for Marathi, and so on for the Devanagari script. Now, word count for languages with low usage of the internet, especially like Balinese, Javanese, and so on, the number of words we get can vary. Now, if you have a word list that you want to include in Hibizcus, you're welcome to download and build the project from the GitHub repository. It's open source. Now, let's take a look at Words tab. Here we have words in the Devanagari script for the default language, which is Hindi. By default, it just lists down the first 1,000 or so words from the list. But if I want to test a particular sequence of words, I can actually type them here and search for those words. I can search for words that contain string, words that contain any letter in the string, words that contain any Unicode in the string, especially if you want to test matras across different base letters in a word. You can look for contain only given Unicodes in the string, so you see the way they are combining. You can start and search for words that start with a particular string or end with a particular string, or forget about all this and use your own regular expressions if you are familiar with it, and search for words that matches those expressions. If I switch the language to Marathi, for example, I'll get a different set of words, and these are all Marathi words written in Devanagari. I can also switch the language to Tamil, and of course, you can't find Marathi words in Tamil, so I'm switching back to the default language, which is Tamil. Then I get Tamil words, and just as an example, I want to look for words that begin with, say, ma. And I have, or containing n letters. So I want to look for words that start with ma. Then I get words that start with ma. So you can play around and check for check how your font renders given words for all the languages that are supported. Now let's look at the numbers tab. Many of the Indian languages have their own numbers. In this case, what you're seeing on the screen are Tamil digits, though they are not used these days. But people are beginning to develop an interest for them, so you want to include them in your font, and you can see how they behave. You can look at 1 digit, 2 digits, 3 digits, 4 or 5 digits. If I change the script to Devanagari, then I will see Devanagari digits. I can also show ASCII digits if they're in the font, and then use the lakh or 1,000 markers to show the Indian format of those numbers. That's all these are. I mean, if you want to play around and check out how the numbers that forms that you have designed in your font appear in real life situation, you can add random and you can look at them here. That's what Numbers tab does. The other two tools in Hibizcus, the String Viewer and Trace Viewer. Unlike Font Viewer, String Viewer and Trace Viewer are not limited by scripts or languages. These tools can be used to inspect the outcome and the process of any open type or even AAT shaping. String Viewer looks at the outcome, and the Trace Viewer inspects the process, the step-by-step process, in shaping the strings. Now let's check out String Viewer first. You can open String Viewer in one of two ways. You can look at File and New String Viewer window. That'll give you this with nothing, no font information, nothing. You have to reload the font all over again, just like the Font Viewer. Or from Font Viewer, you can just click on the String Viewer button here. And that will transfer all of the font information together with the selected glyphs, selected strings from the grid. And if you look at this, you see the outcome of the shaping. So you have the la and sa with the e matra. And you can also look at the names of the glyphs. So you can see that something has happened here. For comparison, let me just type the actual la without the matra. Right? Okay, la without the matra shows you la Tamil, then space, and you see the la Tamil short. So because there's an e matra, this has done a contextual replacement. Likewise, the sa. If I type sa here, it has done the contextual replacement. Now, there's one other feature in this font. If you look at this, if I have two letters, doubling in a word, like if I have a la followed by another la, the second la is an alternate. Just to give some fun variation in the letters. This works even for Latin. So if I type book, right, you can see that the first O is O, second O is alternate. There's another feature that, if I type the same word in Malay, which is buku, I should have an alternate U. Yeah, there is an alternate U. So even if there is a letter in between, I get an alternate form. That's because that's how I've done the OpenType substitution for this. Now let's go back here and look at this. What happens if there is a la here? I have a la before the li, and you see that the la with the e matra is also substituted with an alternate short form. I like, this is okay, but the other one was better. If you look at the C, let me just enlarge this a little bit. If you look at the C, the matra sits around the middle, but this is like, I thought, either you narrow this or with some kerning, push it to a side. So what I can do is, these are the two letters I want to, let me put this back. Look, these are the letters I want to move and kern. Let me also put a star in, so I get it the alternate form. I can now copy the names of these glyphs, the substituted names of this, the final outcome of the string, the names in the final outcome of the sequence, and then open my font editor. In my case, I use glyphs, and I can go and paste them, and I get back the actual glyphs, the resultant glyphs. But if I type it here, I will not get that because the substitution rule would not have kicked in. And then I can go and do my, if I want to kern this a little bit. All right, that's done. And, this is done. So, and then if I export this, if I export the font, all right, Hibizcus would have picked up that there is an update to the font, and it gives you this refresh button. And you click refresh, now you see your font has been updated. So you can inspect any OpenType shaping outcome here. It doesn't matter what language, what script. You can also look at the difference between a Cortex outcome and a half-pass outcome as you did the last time. Now you can see there's a difference here. You can see that the alternate form is not substituted. It's probably because one of the substitution table, I'm not sure if it's rcalt or calt, that is not handled by default in one of the shapers. You need to go and explicitly say that I want this contextual alternate to be substituted. So there you go. You can see the differences in outcome between the shaping engines. So, there are a lot of things you can do. You can show the metrics. You can compare the outcomes if you have another font, just like you did in Font Viewer. You can play around with this. You can show the underline position, show the bounding boxes of each glyph that makes up the composition, and also the anchor points where anchor attachments will take place. And if it's a darker anchor, here, okay, if I put in a, say, L, which is low, there's the anchor where there's a match will be slightly darker than the other side. So that's string viewer. You can go poke around, look at the actual names that comes out of the shaping process, and use copy names to edit. Of course, you can also do copy text. It'll just copy the Unicode text and not the glyph names. So, play around with string viewer. There's a lot more things you can do. Especially if you want to compare outcomes between two different fonts or two different shaping engines. Now let's take a look at Trace Viewer. Trace Viewer uses only the half-pass engine. That's because there's no API to hook into the step-by-step process in Cortex. This tool was originally written to trace AAT shaping, because every step of the process in AAT is defined by state tables. And if an error occurs in one table, it'll contribute to errors in subsequent tables. So it's very important to step through and make sure every step is shaping correctly. Half-pass, thanks to half-pass, it allows us to hook into the process of both AAT and OpenType shaping. I just built the visual interface to it so we can inspect visually what's happening in every step of the way. Now let's take a look at it. Like Stream Viewer, you can either open from File, New, or I can just select a text. Let's look at this text because I want to show you, the ref feature and how that affects shaping. So let's look at this and select Trace Viewer. This will, no, we don't want a String Viewer. So this will bring up Trace Viewer, and you can see the shaping process. Right now, it only shows the steps that makes a difference. It actually goes through every lookup table, that are defined in the features. But I'm only showing you those where a difference is seen. There's a different outcome by going through that table. Now, before we do that, there are a couple of options here. I can also see a full trace of everything that's happening, every lookup table, but it's pointless because, these lookups do nothing to these characters. So it's pointless to see everything. So I just look at lookups that makes a difference. I can also show clusters, colors. Yeah, they'll show this is per, and there's a Umatra, this is Ra, and there's Virama, and the Ver. So these are 3 different clusters. I can also show glyph names if I want. Okay, if we see the full trace, you can actually see the input characters. These are actually the Unicode characters that are in the string. And this is where the startup GSUB table is. Now, one of the first things it is doing is forming the ref. The ref plus Virama is actually forming the ref. And then internally, the engine does the reordering, put the ref after the base letter, and then your substitution table, or rather, there's no substitution here, it's just GPOS that positions the matras below and above the base tables. Now let's take a look at another instance. We'll keep this as it is for comparison. I'm going to bring up another instance of the trace viewer. This time I'm going to load another font, in fact the same font, but I have actually commented off the ref feature. And no, actually I've moved the ref feature to above base substitution, just to show the difference. Now if you look at this, let's use the same string. So I'm going to copy the string from here and put it here. Now, because we did not form the ref in the ref feature, the engine does not do the reordering. So the ref remains where it is. And this ref is actually substituted by above base substitution. And if you look at the GSUB feature table, this will be in above base substitution, wrongly in the above base substitution instead of the ref feature. So and instead of the ref going on the ver, it has now gone on the per. So you can see that because this is not getting reordered and because it's not formed before the initial reordering happens, it does not get reordered and it gets placed on the first base letter instead of the second base letter. This is a very simple example to demonstrate how looking at every step of the process will help you find bugs. You can use more complex strings. For those of you who are familiar with AAT, you can also debug AAT. It's a lot simpler to debug AAT because everything is done on state tables. But here there are some that is done by the engine, and there's some, and the rest of it it's your lookups. So that's a brief demo of the trace viewer. Station has given you a brief overview of what Hibizcus is and what it does. to help you engineer fonts. The tool is free. You can download it from the Mac App Store. It just needs macOS Big Sur later. And for those who want to compile yourself, you can download the entire source together with the Xcode project from the GitHub. I look forward to feedback, and thank you for watching this presentation.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation. Well, you got it's really detailed and fantastic.
Fantastic, Muthu. Very impressive.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I haven't had an opportunity to design an Indic font in a while, but yeah, I'm looking forward to actually make a good use of the Hibizcus.
Right.
Which is coming, but not yet. Yeah.
No, I'm really not qualified at all to ask detailed questions about it. I just wanted to know where the name Hibiscus. Why the name Hibiscus?
Well, I was actually looking for some names, and my colleagues who are sponsoring the project said, "Don't call it a font tool. Everybody knows what a font tool is. Call it something else." So I picked Hibiscus because that's the national flower of Malaysia, the country I come from.
Ah, right. Very nice. No, I love the way you can choose your shaper as well. That seems a really
right.
Yeah, a shame you can't choose display right, but for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
I have a question. Does it support all like Indic scripts or Brahmic scripts? Like, let's say, like some lesser used ones?
Yeah, I have actually added support for quite a lot of scripts, the Indonesian scripts. The recent version, which is now in beta, that's the demo that you saw. That I even added Granta and the Brahmi script itself. So yeah, I mean, but the lesser ones, the new ones, people are actually trying to uncover and encode. It's not there yet because there's no encoding for that script yet. Those that are encoded in Unicode, I think the bulk of them are there. If they are not, it's very easy to add. There's no coding or anything required. It's just a matter of adding that table.
Right. So for my specific case, my wish list is Tibetan.
Okay. Right.
Does it support it now?
It doesn't. It doesn't have data for Tibetan. Then what we need to do is to build the cluster information for Tibetan, piece the vowels, the consonants, and if they're conjuncts, put them in that, piece of all that, and then go look for word list so we can extract common conjuncts and all and put them inside. It's more of that kind of work. There's no coding required because the way Brahmic scripts work is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
I must say, from a technical point of view, I found the full trace view really fascinating. Mm-hmm. Is that the first time that this is possible? As I say, I'm not a.
Well, it's possible. It's possible in the command line with half-bus.
Right. So half-bus
uses
those steps to the.
Right. When you do it command line, I think it's HP trace. It give you the glyph names after every step of the lookup. So I just added GUI to it.
Right, and it's the first time that there's been a GUI on those.
Yeah, I think so. I've not seen any.
It's very nice.
Otherwise, I would have used them.
Yeah. How's this? How's it gone down with other people who make Indic fonts?
I've been getting very good feedback from people who are using it, especially my friends in Indonesia. They use this to debug the Balinese, the Javanese fonts. I've been getting a lot of good feedback.
Great, and it's just you developing it?
Yeah, I get a lot of cluster information. I've got friends who send me cluster information from Cambodia for the Khmer script.
Mm-hmm.
But developing, I have been doing this for some time, for a few years. So I just piece all that code together into a GUI,
And you're funding it yourself, or are you seeking funding?
No, I have a sponsor, but I'm not at liberty to disclose who they are. But they have. I have got funding.
Yeah. Very good.
And the reason why it's not in Windows is because I don't have funding to do it for Windows.
Right.
So it's technically possible.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
okay.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
All right. There seems to be a question. Peter from Blockland asks, do you read and write all the scripts that you make the editor to work for? If not, how does the communication go with native speakers about which specific tests specimen to implement?
Okay. Yeah, I don't read all the scripts. I can make sense of it. I can read them, but I can make sense of the letters. And I know how they work, but I won't understand what that word means. So I understand how the letters work. There are two levels of testing you can do. The first level is to make sure you don't see dotted circles. If you are not putting it correctly, or if you don't have don't have a glyph given for a required letter for that script, then you'll probably be seeing dotted circles in the word list. So if you're seeing them, then something is wrong. The word list, I wouldn't say it's 100% clean, but what I did was I scrapped the word list from the Wikipedia database and some other sites, and then sorted them by frequency and only picked the ones that are most commonly used. So the least common words, I treat them as typos or errors and throw them away. If you know the letters, and if you know how the marks are positioned above the base letters, that should be good enough. You don't have to read the script in order to work on that font. That's the whole intent. When I did the fonts for all those languages, when I started off, I don't read all of them. I can now, but when I started off, I didn't read them. So this word list helped me to make sure that it makes sense and nothing is running out. There's no dot circles. The mark is not, awkwardly positioned against some other base letter and things like that. But certainly you need a native person to look at the final product, to endorse the font. I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Muthu.
And Erwin mentions crowbar. What is crowbar?
Oh, that's one of Simon Cousins' tools.
Ah, right.
And I think Erwin is correct. That does show the output of HB trace. Is that, maybe Erwin can comment on whether that's the point he's making? I think you can get HB trace output out of crowbar.
Oh, there seems to be another. Oh no, the Peter is happy with the answer. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, Erwin confirms that. Yeah. Has Fiona Ross seen this, by the way? Muthu? Has Muthu gone?
See, maybe he's frozen.
Oh,
he might not be present actually.
Oh, he's vanished.
He's gone.
Maybe he'll reappear.
Yeah.
Let's give him a few minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
He comes back. In the meantime, any more questions for Muthu in case he comes back? And I'm sure we can drag him to the Hangout room if he doesn't make it back during the hour. Do we have any Hibizcus users in the room?
Or potential users?
Yeah, I don't know how new it is. Is it how long is it
I
Yeah.
think it's been around for at least a year.
Okay.
Well, we don't want to close the room without saying thank you or bye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give him another couple of minutes, and then maybe he's having internet issues.
Yeah.
I did enjoy the glyph name copying straight into glyphs. That's a very handy thing. Really neatly implemented. Oh, Victor says he's tried it in the past, but not recently. Right.
I think the interface and what it does looks kind of similar to Microsoft's Vault. It's a similar kind of.
Yes, someone who knows both well. It would be interesting to compare them. Do you know Vault well, Toshi?
Yeah, I think, but the fundamental difference is that Hibiscus doesn't change the font, if I'm not mistaken. It checks some behavior, so it's efficient proofing tool, but it doesn't actually edit the font file. So you still need to do the coding outside.
I see. Yes.
That's
Yeah.
Muthu is back. I guess that's what we can ask. Is Muthu? Should I click him live?
Oh, maybe he's appeared as a. Is he? Oh yeah. Can you click the live button so we don't both click it, Toshi?
Okay. I'll click.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, good.
Hi, Muthu.
Okay.
Welcome back. We were just talking about how it compares with Vault, and Toshi was proposing that Vault.
Yeah.
Obviously, Vault you make changes to the font, and Hibiscus,
right,
you don't make changes. Is that one difference?
Exactly. Yeah, I think Vault is a visual open type layout tool. So you actually create open type tables with Vault. But this is just to prove your font, to test the shaping works. As I pointed out earlier in the presentation, the focus of Hibiscus is to give you what to expect from a font if it's targeted for a given language and a script. So if it's Devanagari for, say, Marathi, then these are the expected clusters that are required in the font. But Volt is it's a tool for you to write open type tables. It doesn't tell you, hey, you need to have this 2-part conjuncts, you need to have this 3-part. It doesn't tell you all that. But Hibiscus tells you all that. And you're right. You can't edit the font in Hibiscus. I mean, it's just viewing and proving. You have to go back to the source tool to edit it.
Sure. Yeah, I get it.
All right.
Maybe this is a much broader point, but what's your and what's current practice? I'm interested in between fonts being made with AAT and fonts being made with type layout. What decides to use fonts in the system?
Sure. I don't think anyone is doing AAT anymore. Well, my fonts in macOS, the older ones, some of them are still AAT only, but a lot of them have been updated to also include OpenType. And macOS by default, if it sees AAT, it takes AAT as priority, and so does halfpass. So if you have both shaping data in the font, then Cortex and halfpass, they will pick AAT first. The reason I use AAT is to experiment with things, so I don't have to worry about how that works. So I can reorder when I need to reorder, and insert when I need to insert. Whereas OpenType doesn't do that. It expects to have some substitutions to be done, and then the internal reordering, the internal engine will then do all the reordering for you. That's the only reason I use AAT, but my shipping fonts are no longer done with AAT. They're all done with OpenType.
Right. And does Apple still, if Apple is commissioning fonts, they're happy with OpenType?
They're happy with AAT. They're happy with OpenType, yes.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, there seems to be another question. Owen Dennison asks, would it be more convenient to have the proofing inside a font editor, like done in Font Creator?
I think it's a good idea, definitely possible. And some font tool makers have actually communicated with me and are exploring the possibility of taking the Hibizcus code and putting it in their tools. But for trace viewer, they don't need anything from me. I think the most of the bulk of the API is provided by Half-Plus, so they can do that. But the technique of laying out the glyphs, pre and post shaping, those are all open source. They can just take it and use it in their code. That part of my tool is written in Swift, but I think you can easily rewrite that in C++ or whatever language the tool is written in.
Just before you disappeared, Muthu, I was asking if you had shown this to Fiona Ross and whether she had.
Yes, Fiona Ross is my teacher. I mean, she was my supervisor for my MRes when I did that in Reading 2 or 3 years ago. I haven't had a chance to show her yet, and I hope to. I'm sure there will be an opportunity for me to see her. I'm actually quite excited about showing this to her.
Oh, nice to hear.
All right. I think if there's no further comments or questions, I think that concludes the session here.
Thanks again, Muthu.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Hope this was useful. Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.